There is a particular kind of person that almost every school produces exactly one of, the one everybody likes, not the most popular in the loud sense and not the leader, but the one whose name comes up when somebody says they need help with something, the person who remembers what you told them, who is genuinely pleased to see you every time without ever seeming to want anything. You have known one, most people have. This is the story of what one of them turned out to be at a school built specifically to find out. Most stories about a person wearing a mask begin by telling you it is a mask. This one does something harder. It gives you a girl who is genuinely, measurably good at being kind, lets you watch her do real work for people who need it, and only afterwards asks you to hold that alongside what she is. And the reason it works is that the kindness never turns out to have been fake. It turns out to have been useful. It is worth understanding the place she has arrived at, because no school on earth could have been better designed for her, and none could have been worse. Advanced Nurturing High School sits on its own grounds, sealed off. The students live there for 3 years and essentially never leave. There is no going home at weekends, no outside friends, no separate life to retreat into. Whatever social world exists for these students is the one inside those walls, and it is the only one they will have until they graduate. For a girl whose entire existence depends on being liked, that is paradise. A closed population, fixed for 3 years, with nowhere for anybody to escape to and no competing sources of anybody's attention. She can work the whole board and the board never changes. It is also, for exactly the same reasons, a trap with no exit. If it ever goes wrong here, there is nowhere to go. No new school, no fresh start, no town she can move to where nobody has heard. In her old life, when everything came apart, she could at least leave and choose somewhere far away and begin again. She used that escape once already. It is how she got here. She does not get another one. So we should start where the school starts, with what she says she wants. On the first morning in a classroom of strangers, she stands up and tells them her name is Kikyo Kushida, and that her goal is to become friends with every person in the entire school, not her class, the school, and she adds brightly that if anyone is going out, they should please consider inviting her. It is the kind of introduction that could be nothing at all. 16-year-olds say things in first-day introductions. But consider what that sentence is actually proposing, taken literally, which is the only way she means it. There are roughly 480 students in that school across 3 years. She has announced out loud on her first morning that she intends to be friends with every one of them, not friendly with, friends with. Nobody can do that, not because it is difficult, but because it is not a thing that exists. Friendship, the ordinary kind, is expensive. It takes time you cannot duplicate and attention you cannot divide, and a person with 400 friends has, definitionally, something other than friends. So either she does not understand what the word means, which is not the case, because she understands people better than anybody else in that building. Or she is describing a different activity entirely, and using the ordinary word for it because the ordinary word is what opens doors. Except she means it operationally. Within a day she's talking to Honami Ichinose from Class B, the most popular student in the year and the leader of a rival class, and describing her as a friend she made yesterday. Before the first month is out, the girl in the bottom class has a working line into the class most likely to beat them. And the school which grades these students before any of them has said a word had already seen it coming. Her entrance assessment reads B for academic ability, B- for intellect, C+ for judgment, B for physical ability. Solid, unremarkable, the profile of a decent student. And then cooperativeness, A. That is her highest single mark, and it is worth sitting with what it means at this particular school, where the letters you are given are a verdict on your defects. The same assessment for the girl who will become her enemy reads A for academics and E for cooperativeness. Horikita is brilliant and cannot work with people. Kushida is ordinary and can work with anyone. They are the same student, measured from opposite ends. And it is worth pausing on why the school put her in Class D at all, because that question sits underneath everything, and the story never answers it directly. Class D is not the class for students who lack ability. It is the class the school builds out of students it has decided are defective in some specific way. Horikita is there because she cannot work with anyone. Sudo is there because he cannot pass an examination. Koenji is there because he will not lift a finger for another human being. So what is Kushida's defect? On the evidence of that assessment card, there isn't one. Solid grades, elite cooperativeness, no obvious flaw at all. If the school sorted purely on what it could see in an entrance interview, she should be somewhere in the middle of the year comfortably and not sitting at the bottom. Which means the school saw something. The entrance interviews at this place are not a formality, and the sorting is not sloppy. Something in her file or in that interview told them where she belonged. The story does not tell you what, and it does not need to yet, but it is worth carrying that question through the next stretch, because everyone in that classroom is there for a reason, and she is no exception. There is one relationship she cannot get, and she goes after it harder than anything else. In the first week she asks Horikita for her phone number, so she might call her sometime. Horikita turns her down flat and tells her she does not want to be friends with anyone. Most people would let that go. A girl trying to befriend the entire school can afford to lose one. Kushida does not let it go. She goes to Ayanokoji and asks him to help her get closer to Horikita, and the reason she gives is that he is the only person in the class Horikita ever talks to, which is true and which she has noticed in a class of 40 strangers in under a week. Then there is the cafe. A small gathering is arranged, a few classmates and some coffee, with the specific purpose of getting Horikita into a room with other human beings and letting the ordinary social process do its work. Kushida is part of it. Horikita works out what it is within about a minute and walks out. It is worth holding on to that early failure, because it is the only thing in this whole first stretch that does not go Kushida's way. She acquires Ichinose, the most popular girl in the year, from a rival class in a day. She acquires 3 failing boys nobody else could move. She acquires an upperclassman's cooperation and a set of examination papers. And she cannot acquire the girl sitting a few desks away, who simply looks at the offer and declines it. Now the part that most retellings skip, and the part everything else depends on, the help is real. And it is worth being concrete about what real means here, because there is a version of this character that circulates online in which she is simply a manipulator who fools everybody, and that version cannot account for the evidence. A manipulator who does nothing gets found out quickly. People are not actually very good at maintaining a good opinion of somebody who never delivers. What sustains a reputation over 2 years, in a closed environment, among 40 people who see each other every single day, is not charm, it is a track record. Hers is genuinely excellent, and it is easiest to see in the things that would have gone badly without her. Take the study group. 3 boys in Class D, Sudo and Ike and Yamauji, are failing, and getting them into a room with a textbook is the single most valuable thing anybody could do for the class. Hirata tries, and Hirata is the most trusted person in the room, and they refuse him. Horikita tries and they walk out. Ayanokoji, out of options, asks Kushida, and she delivers all 3. Her price for doing it is that she gets to come too. The study group still collapses, because Horikita opens her mouth, but the delivery of 3 unwilling boys into a room was Kushida's work and nobody else's, and nobody else could have done it. Take the examination papers. Before the first midterm, when the class has no idea what is coming and no idea that failure means expulsion, she works an upperclassman until he agrees to sell the previous year's questions. That purchase is what gets Class D through, and when she hands the material over, she lets Ayanokoji stay invisible, because he asked her to, and she takes the visible credit herself. That trade, her taking the credit and him taking the result, becomes the template for their entire relationship. Take the island. On the first night of a 7-day survival examination, a girl from Class C named Mio Ibuki is found injured, and Class D argues about what to do with an enemy student in their camp. Kushida walks over with food. "Your name is Ibuki, right?" she says. "Here, you should eat." Ibuki tells her they are all idiots, every single one of them. And Kushida says, "Just eat, what harm is there in that?" and then adds, "We can talk later too if you're feeling up to it." Ibuki is visibly thrown by it. She has been beaten and abandoned by her own class, and the enemy is bringing her fruit. Notice the last line though, "We can talk later." The kindness and the collection of information are not 2 separate acts she is alternating between. They are one motion. She's being genuinely decent to an injured girl, and she is opening a channel, and there is no seam between the two, and there never is. There is a small errand early on that shows the whole mechanism working in a single afternoon, and almost nobody notices it, because on the surface it is just a nice thing being done for a shy girl. Airi Sakura, the quietest person in the class, has a broken camera. Kushida goes with her and Ayanokoji to the electronics shop to get it repaired. It is a kind, ordinary, entirely unremarkable act of taking care of a classmate who would never have managed the errand alone. And afterwards, Kushida knows something about Irie that Irie has been desperately keeping hidden, which is that she used to work as an idol under a different name. Nothing happens with that. She does not use it, does not threaten her, does not tell anybody. She simply now knows, and Irie does not know that she knows, and the information sits somewhere it can be reached later. That is the collection mechanism, running in daylight in front of everybody, disguised as exactly what it also genuinely is. She did help, the camera did get fixed, a frightened girl did get through an errand she could not have faced by herself, and a secret went into a file. Both halves happened, neither cancels the other. And then there is a beat that is simply lovely, and I do not think it is anything else, though by now you will have learned to check. On the cruise, Ike nervously asks whether he might call her by her first name. He is a boy who is bad at almost everything and has never once been smooth with anybody, and asking is visibly costing him something. She says yes, and then asks whether she might do the same in return. That is all it is, 3 seconds. It makes his entire week, and it costs her nothing, and there is no conceivable angle in it, and she does it anyway, because doing that sort of thing is who she has decided to be, and the decision holds even when nobody is keeping score. That is the thing about her that is genuinely difficult, and it is why she is so much harder to catch than an ordinary liar. A liar can be checked. Every single thing Kushida does can be checked, and it all comes back true. The boys really did come to the study group. The papers really did get the class through. The food really did get eaten. The camera really did get fixed. The class notices, too, and they say so in the only way this school ever asks them to. Much later, in an examination where every student casts 3 votes for the classmates they value most, Kushida finishes 3rd in the entire class. Only Ayanikoji and Hirata place higher. By her classmates' own private ballot, cast in secret, she is one of the 3 most valuable people in that room. And the school's own instruments agree. When the second year brings an application that rates every student across 4 scales, her social contribution reads A at 88, and her adaptability A- at 82, both at or near the top of the entire class. The machine built to measure contribution to the group rates her near the ceiling of it. There is a moment in the second year that shows the skill in miniature, and it lasts about 4 seconds. Ike is having a conversation with Shinohara and mishandling it badly, in the way he mishandles most conversations. Kushida reads the room, brokers him a separate offer from a girl in another class, and physically walks him out of the conversation before it becomes an argument. Nobody asked her, nobody thanks her, the argument simply never happens, and neither of them ever knows it was going to. That is the work. It is unglamorous and constant and almost invisible, and a class that has it does not know what it has, because the problems it prevents leave no trace. It is worth saying plainly what Class D would look like without her, because the story gives you enough to reconstruct it. The 3 failing boys never sit down with a textbook, so at least one of them is expelled in the first term. The class never gets the old examination papers, so the midterm goes considerably worse for everybody. The arguments that Hirata smooths over from the front happen anyway, but the ones nobody sees coming, the small ones between 2 people in a corridor, never get intercepted. And the class has no line into any other class at all, because Kushida is the only person in that room with friends outside it. A class is not only its top students, it is also whatever holds it together while the top students are busy being brilliant at each other. Horikita supplies direction, Hirata supplies trust, Ayanikoji supplies whatever it is he supplies from somewhere out of frame, and Kushida supplies the connective tissue, the part nobody notices until it tears. Which is exactly why she is so dangerous, though we are not there yet. She is not embedded in that class as a passenger. She is load-bearing. There is a scene at the sports festival that shows the same skill from a different angle, and it is worth walking through carefully, because it is the clearest demonstration of what she actually does in a room. Class D has to decide how to assign its events. Pseudo argues they should be allocated by ability, putting the strong athletes where they will win. Horikita agrees and goes further, adding a plan that pairs the strong with the weak, which in practice means openly writing off the students who cannot compete. It is efficient. It is also the sort of proposal that leaves a third of the room feeling like ballast. Karuizawa objects and then does something specific. She turns and asks Kushida what she thinks. And Kushida says she would prefer a plan that both sides could benefit from and agree on. That is all. It is not a counter-proposal with numbers attached. It is the humane sentence, said out loud, at the exact moment the room needed somebody to say it. Hirata calls a vote, and Horikita's plan wins. Kushida loses. And she is the only person who walks out of that meeting with more goodwill than she walked in with. Think about what just happened. Horikita was right on the merits and paid for it socially. Kushida was overruled and gained. She did not obstruct, she did not campaign, she did not force a confrontation she was going to lose. She simply put herself on the record as the person who cared about the students nobody was defending and let the vote go the other way. There is a second layer to that scene that the story shows you explicitly, and it is worth knowing. Karuizawa asked Kushida's opinion because Ayanokoji had instructed her to. He wanted to object to Horikita's plan and then immediately test how much weight Kushida's word carried in that room. He was measuring her, and she passed. Then there is the island nomination, and this is the one to sit with longest because everything about her is in it. Class D must choose a leader for the survival examination, secretly. The rules make the choice enormous. If another class works out who your leader is, you lose 50 points and every bonus point you earned all week. So the leader must be someone nobody would suspect, and also someone who can actually do the job. The class settles on Hirata almost immediately, by simple acclamation, because Hirata is who you pick. And Kushida interrupts. She says she's been thinking about this a lot, that people like Hirata and Karuizawa stand out even when they do not intend to, that the leader should be somebody who flies under the radar, but who still needs to be responsible, and that only one person in the class fits both requirements. Horikita. Hirata immediately agrees, Horikita accepts, and the analysis is correct. It is genuinely the right call, made for the right reasons, in a room that was about to make the obvious mistake. Concealment is the whole game, and Hirata is the least concealable person in the class. It is also true that she has just taken the one job in the examination where being noticed destroys the class, and handed it to the one person in the world she wants destroyed. Both of those are true at once, neither cancels the other, and the story never once has her tell us which one she meant. That is not an oversight, that is the design. You are being trained in these early episodes to be unable to separate her helpfulness from her intent, because the people around her cannot separate them either, and they have far more information than you do. There is one more thing worth flagging before we go further, because it gets repeated a great deal. You will often hear that Kushida memorized every classmate's name on the first day. It is a lovely detail and it fits her perfectly. I cannot find it in the anime, so I'm not going to tell you it happened. What the show actually gives you is smaller and stranger. She and Ayanokoji each already know the other's name before they have ever exchanged a word, and she is delighted about it. I am so impressed, she says, you remembered my name too. Which tells you something truer than the myth does. She keeps track of people, everyone, constantly, not as a party trick, but as a standing operation that never switches off. So this is the girl the class has. Warm, tireless, universally liked, elite at the one thing this school says their class lacks. The person you go to when something needs smoothing over. The reason 3 failing boys sat down with a textbook, and the reason a frightened girl from an enemy class ate a meal. She is, by every measure the school and her classmates can apply, the best thing about Class D. There are 2 small details from that first term worth carrying forward, because neither of them means anything on its own and both of them will mean something later. The first is that at some point she acquires a duplicate key to Ayanokoji's room. It is mentioned in passing, casually, in the middle of something else, the way you would mention that a friend has a spare key to your flat. Nobody comments on it. He does not appear to have given it to her. The second is a conversation the 2 of them have about the pseudo case, when the whole class is trying to work out how to defend a boy accused of something he did not do. Kushida observes, quite calmly, that in the absence of hard evidence people will believe the law-abiding citizen over the known troublemaker, every time. She says it as an ordinary piece of social realism, which is what it is. It is also, if you go back and listen to it after everything, a description of the exact principle her entire life is built on. She is the law-abiding citizen. That is the whole product. And she has understood, since long before she arrived at this school, that reputation is not a consequence of behavior. It is a shield you build in advance, out of 100 small kindnesses, so that when the accusation finally comes, nobody believes it. And on a quiet evening early in that first term, after a party she organized in a room she filled with people she had brought together, she leaves her phone behind, and one classmate walks outside to return it to her. He finds her outside alone, and she is screaming. She is cursing Horikita, calling her prettier, better than her, saying that she wants her to die, and kicking a steel barrier hard over and over in the dark with her face completely unrecognizable. This is a girl who, 20 minutes earlier, was hosting a party to celebrate a classmate not being expelled. What gives him away is a chime from his phone. And what she does next is the single most important thing this character ever does, because it happens in about 4 seconds and it tells you everything. She asks him flatly whether he saw. Then she takes his hand, presses it against her chest, and tells him that if he ever repeats a word of it, she will accuse him of attempted rape, and his fingerprints will be the evidence. There is no hesitation in it, no build-up, no threat escalating through stages, no moment where she considers a different approach and discards it. She is caught, and within seconds she has manufactured physical evidence for a false accusation that would end him, and she is explaining it to him calmly. He agrees to say nothing. And she takes a breath, and the bubbly girl comes back, completely, instantly, and she tells him brightly that this is just another secret between the two of them. Then she goes home. What Ayanokoji is left with, and what he thinks about afterwards, is the question the whole character is built on. He goes back through every conversation they have ever had, every kindness, every cheerful exchange, and he finds that he cannot tell which of them he was talking to. Not one, not even the ones that seemed obviously genuine. And the story never answers that question. Not in this episode, not in the next 3 seasons. It is asked on screen in the 3rd episode, and it is simply left standing. So it is worth being careful here, because this is where a lot of retellings go wrong. What you have just watched is proof that she has a second face. It is not yet proof that she is working against her class. Those are different things, and the story separates them by an entire season, and the gap between them is deliberate. And before we go on, there is a question sitting under that scene that deserves an answer, which is why Hori Kita specifically. Because the tantrum was not about the class, or the school, or the points. She was screaming one girl's name into the dark. The story eventually gives 3 reasons, at 3 separate points, and the first one arrives at the end of that first year, on the ship home. The class is thanking Hori Kita for a victory she did not actually earn, and Kushida takes Ayanokoji aside and finally explains herself. She tells him she hates Hori Kita because Hori Kita has no hidden side. That is the reason, not that Hori Kita wronged her, not that Hori Kita is in her way, because Hori Kita is exactly one person, all the way through, with no second face, no performance, and no cost. Think about what that means from inside Kushida's life. She is adored by almost everybody, and it is killing her. Hori Kita is disliked by almost everybody, and does not care in the slightest. One of them is paying an enormous private price for public warmth. The other has simply declined to participate, and lost nothing she values. Kushida looks at that, and cannot bear it. There is a rawer version of the same thing in what she actually screamed that night, which was not about masks or philosophy. It was that Hori Kita is prettier than her, better than her. It is the pure, unglamorous envy underneath the analysis, and the story is careful to give you both, because the second is what the first is really made of. And then, having explained herself, she asks Ayanokoji a question. She asks which of them he would choose, her or Hori Kita. He does not answer. She calls him mean, brightly, and lets it drop, and the moment passes as though it were nothing. But it is the only time in the entire story that she asks anybody to pick her, and she asks it of the one person who has seen her without the mask on. He says nothing at all, and she never asks again. For the rest of that first year, she is exactly as useful as she was before. The kindness does not stop. The results do not stop. The girl who threatened to destroy a boy's life continues delivering 3 failing students to study groups and feeding injured strangers. There is a scene on the cruise, some months after that night, which shows you exactly what the mask is like once you know it is a mask. Ayanokoji is with Irie. Kushida finds them, and she wants him to talk to her, and he is being evasive. So she drops the voice. Not a tantrum, not a threat. She simply lets the other one out mid-conversation, deliberately as a tool to make him stop deflecting. It works immediately, and then she tells him that she can sense how wary of her he has become. And then she puts the first voice back on and says something that is, as far as anyone can tell, completely true, that she feels lonely when she is left alone. That is the whole character in about 15 seconds. She uses her real self as an instrument, applies it precisely, gets the result she wanted, packs it away, and then says something sincere and slightly sad that you have no way of evaluating. He never does work out which parts of that were real, neither do we. The relationship between those two is one of the strangest things in the story, and it is worth naming what it actually is, because it is not friendship, and it is not enmity, and it does not have a common word. He is the only person alive who has seen her without the mask. She threatened to destroy his life within seconds of it happening, and then for the next 2 years they simply carry on. They talk in corridors, she does him favors, he asks her for things, she sells him information, they sit in the same room every day. Neither of them ever mentions it again, except when it is useful. What they have is closer to a working arrangement between two professionals who happen to know each other's true nature. She knows he is not what he pretends to be, because she has watched him engineer things from behind other people. He knows exactly what she is, because he saw it, and they have both concluded, independently, that exposing the other would cost more than it would gain. So they trade instead. There is something almost restful about it from her side, and the story lets you notice that without saying so. Every other relationship she has requires the performance to run continuously, at full power, with no breaks. With him it does not. He already knows. There is nothing left to protect. It is the only relationship in her life where she does not have to work, and it exists because he caught her at her worst moment, and she failed to silence him. She asked him once on the ship which of them he would choose. Perhaps that is why. The second reveal comes later, and it comes because Ayanokoji goes looking. Around the sports festival, he tells Horikita that he believes Class D has a traitor, someone leaking to the other classes, and that he suspects Kushida. And then he does something quite cold to confirm it. He arranges a reconnaissance trip to observe the other classes, and he deliberately brings Kushida and Horikita along together, so he can watch them. On the way, he asks Kushida what caused the rift between her and Horikita. Her answer is that it is because of her, not because of Horikita, because of herself. And then Horikita, who has her own suspicions, asks her directly whether she worked with Ryuen or Katsuragi during the crew's examination. Kushida deflects, so Horikita drops it and asks something simpler instead, whether she can trust her as a classmate. Kushida says yes. She says it to her face, while Ayanokoji stands there watching, knowing it is a lie. That question of Horikita's, about whether Kushida worked with Ryuen or Katsuragi during the crew's examination, is not idle. Something had gone wrong for Class D on that ship, in a test where the classes were mixed into groups and had to identify a hidden student among them, and Horikita has been quietly working backwards from the result ever since. She does not get an answer. Kushida deflects, and Horikita, who has no proof and does not enjoy accusing people, lets it go and asks the softer question instead, whether she can be trusted. And there is an older incident, from much earlier, that reads differently in hindsight. When 3 boys from Class C turned up for the confrontation that nearly ended Sudo's time at the school, they came because they had been told that Kushida had called them. Her name was the lure, not her doing necessarily. The story never establishes that she made the call. What it establishes is that her name, by itself, was already sufficient to move 3 students from a hostile class to a chosen place at a chosen time, without any of them questioning it. That is what a reputation like hers is actually worth, operationally. She does not need to be present to make things happen. She only needs to be believed in. The confirmation arrives shortly after. Ayanokoji catches her photographing the class's event participation table with her phone, the document listing exactly who is competing in what, which is precisely the information a rival class would need to counter them. He tells her he is confident she leaked it to Ryuen. She keeps smiling and denies it. He tells her he will simply have Chabashira confirm who accessed the list. And she laughs and admits it. Not defensively, she admits it and tells him she is confident she will never be exposed, which, given how well the mask has held for a year, is a fair assessment. So he asks her what she actually wants. And she tells him plainly, she wants Suzune Horikita expelled from the school. That is the goal. She adds that once Horikita is gone, she will cooperate with the class properly and aim for Class A with everybody else, and that from this point, Ayanokoji is a target too. Sit with the shape of that for a moment, because it is not the ordinary shape of a saboteur. She is not trying to sink Class D, she says so. She intends to help them win afterwards sincerely. The betrayal is not ideological, and it is not about the class at all. The class is simply standing between her and one specific person, so the class gets spent. And the spending is real. Class D loses event after event at that sports festival because the other side knows their lineup before they take the field. Those are genuine class points, gone, costing 39 people something measurable. She does not care, that was never the point. She was paying, not losing. Then there is the ledger. Her method in her own account is to be the person everybody confides in. She positions herself as safe, as warm, as the one who will not judge you, and people tell her things. And the things they tell her do not go anywhere. They go into inventory. The kindness is the collection mechanism. That is not a cynical reading imposed from outside. It is how she describes it herself. And the story does something very smart to show you the size of that inventory, rather than just asserting it. It shows you a transaction. In the third season, it is revealed that Ayanokoji has been buying information from her, dirt on students across the entire first year, and the price he agreed to pay is half of his private points every month going forward indefinitely. Half his income permanently. He then routes the material through the vice president of another class to spread rumors with it, including the rumors that badly damage Ichi-no-sei, and his stated reason for making the purchase in the first place is to measure the quality and quantity of what she is holding. He was not buying gossip, he was auditing the ledger. That is the answer to how much she has. Enough to be worth half a person's income forever, and enough to move the opinion of an entire year group when a competent operator gets hold of it. And the collection never stops. By the second year, she is the person Ayanokoji goes to for information about first-year students, children she has known for 3 months, because in 3 months she has already built the file. It is worth sitting for a moment with what it would actually be like to be inside that class, because the story never dramatizes it, and it is quietly horrifying. Every single person in that room has told Kushida something. That is what she is for. She is the safe one, the one who listens without judging, and over a year and a half that adds up to nearly 40 people who have each, at some point, in a corridor or over lunch or late at night when something was going badly, told her the thing they do not tell anybody. And every one of them believes they are the only one, because that is how confiding works. You do not picture the other 38. None of them has any idea that the conversation was recorded, in the only place recording matters, which is in the memory of a person who was cataloging it while nodding sympathetically. And none of them will ever find out, unless the day comes when using it is worth more to her than holding it. There is no defense against this. That is what makes it different from every other threat in this school. You can prepare for an examination. You can counter a strategy. Ryuen can be outmaneuvered. Sakayanagi can be beaten at chess. The school's rules can be read carefully enough to find the gap. But there is no way to untell somebody something, and no way to know whether the kind person you are talking to is keeping a file. And the only students in that building who are safe from Kushida are the ones who never told her anything, which is to say almost nobody, because not confiding in her would require having seen through her first. The 3 failing boys she got into a study group told her things. The frightened girl whose camera she fixed told her things. The classmates whose arguments she diffused told her things while she was diffusing them. She did help all of them. That is not in question, and it never has been. And she kept every word. So what is she underneath? The anime is specific about this, and it is worth being precise, because the honest answer is smaller and stranger than the one people usually supply. She tells it herself eventually. In primary school she won things, competitions, top marks, and winning got her praise from her family and her friends, and the praise felt in her own description close to ecstatic. She wanted more of it, as much as she could get. Then junior high arrived, and there were people better than her, and the praise stopped. And being ignored turned out to be unbearable. So she made a decision that is genuinely clever, in a cold sort of way. If she could not be number 1 at academics and could not be number 1 at sport, she would be number 1 at something with no competition in it. She would be the most trusted person in the room. She began doing for other people the things most people cannot be bothered to do, and she aimed it deliberately at the students nobody else bothered with, the ones on the edges, because they had the most to give in return. And what they gave her was their secrets. Notice what is missing from that account. There is no cruelty done to her, no abusive home, no bullying, no wound. The anime never gives her a sympathetic origin, and it is important not to invent one for her, because the absence is the point. The explanation the story offers is simply this. Praise felt very good, and then it stopped, and she could not accept that. That is deliberately unsatisfying. It is meant to be. A tidy trauma would let you file her away as damaged and move on. What you get instead is a girl who is not broken in any way you can name, who simply wanted to be adored badly enough to build a machine for it. But there is a cost, and she is explicit about that too. Maintaining it is agony. She describes pulling her own hair out, vomiting from the anxiety, reaching her limit. The most liked girl in the year is being slowly destroyed by the effort of being liked every day without a break, because the performance can never stop for a moment. And she had one release valve in middle school, an anonymous blog where she wrote down what she actually thought about the people around her. That blog is where the whole story turns, and we are coming to it. But hold on to the shape of it now, because it explains a scene you have already seen. When Ayane Koji found her outside that dormitory, screaming at a steel barrier in the dark, he was not watching her lose control. He was watching the only pressure valve she has left, being used the way she uses it every time, because the one she used to have was taken away from her. The way the full story finally comes out is worth knowing, because of what it costs to buy it. Horikita, by this point, has worked out roughly what she is dealing with. She knows there was an incident at their old middle school. She knows a name was attached to it. She does not know what happened, and she says so. And here is the detail that tells you how little any of this was ever about Horikita personally. Horikita admits to Kushida's face that she had not even remembered her at first. She did not recognize her. For most of that first year, the person Kushida was building an entire campaign to destroy had not given her a second thought. It changes nothing. Kushida's answer is that she will eliminate even the smallest risk factor, regardless of what Horikita does or does not know. The possibility is enough. It was always enough. So Horikita, rather than defend against this indefinitely, offers to settle it. One bet, one exam, and it ends. The terms are brutal. They will compete on a single subject of Kushida's choosing in the coming final examination. If Kushida scores higher, Horikita voluntarily leaves the school. Not a demotion. She withdraws entirely. And if Kushida loses, she stops trying to get Horikita expelled and stops getting in her way. Kushida chooses mathematics, and she chooses it because she believes she can rig it. And then Ayane Koji, who has been listening on an open phone line the whole time, is brought into the bet as well. Kushida moves to include him, knowing he is there. He accepts and puts his own expulsion on the table alongside Horikita's. His price for accepting that risk is that she tells him what actually happened in middle school. That is why we know the story at all. The entire confession is the purchase price of a boy agreeing to gamble his own place at the school. Horikita disapproves. He does it anyway. The witness they agree on is Manabu Horikita, Suzune's older brother, the outgoing student council president, who happens to have attended the same middle school as both of them. He greets Kushida by name and remarks that he never forgets a face. Whether he knows what she did there, the story never tells us. Kushida raises no objection to him at all. And so she tells it. And it is worth noticing what she is being asked to do here, because it is the one thing she has spent her entire life avoiding. She has to describe herself, accurately, out loud, to two people, with no performance available, because a performed version would be worthless as payment and Ayane Koji would know. For anybody else this would be uncomfortable. For her it is close to unthinkable. The whole architecture of her life is that nobody gets to see the mechanism. And she agrees to it anyway, because the alternative is losing the bet before it starts, and because she is confident enough that she does not expect the story to cost her anything. That confidence turns out to be roughly correct, which is its own kind of grim. She tells them the worst thing she has ever done, in detail, and it changes nothing about her position. They cannot use it. There is nobody to tell who would believe them. She had built the same machine there that she has built here. Most trusted girl in the class, the center of everything, the one everybody confided in. And the confidences went into inventory, exactly as they do now, and the mask cost her exactly what it costs her now, which is her hair and her stomach and most of her peace. And the blog was where she put everything she actually thought. Anonymous, private, and completely honest, which meant it was the only place in her life where she existed. Somebody found it. One classmate and then all of them, and the mask came off in a single stroke. She puts the number of students who turned on her at around 30, an entire class, all at once, discovering exactly what the girl they trusted had been writing about them. And she had every one of their secrets. So she released them, not defensively and not at the people who had exposed her. She aimed them at each other. What happened next is the part she describes with something close to satisfaction. The class turned on itself. The boys fought each other. The girls went at each other. The The classroom was physically wrecked, and the thing she had spent years building, that web of quiet obligations and shared confidences, turned out to work perfectly well in reverse. The school could not punish her because she had not technically broken a single rule, so it buried the incident instead, and the rumors ran for a while, and then stopped very suddenly, and everybody carried on as though nothing had happened. The class never recovered, not that term, not that year. It was still not right by the time Horikita graduated. And when Kushida finishes telling this story, she does not apologize for it, or explain it away, or show any sign that it troubles her. She describes the result as truly amazing. Then she says one more thing, to both of them, in the same pleasant voice. That she could do exactly the same thing to Class D whenever she wanted. It is worth being precise about that last line, because it is a threat and not a prophecy. She is telling them what she is capable of, and what she is holding, and that the only thing standing between this class and that classroom is her own choice. Nothing more than that happens with it here. And her plan for winning is genuinely good. She goes to Ryuen and offers a trade. She will hand Class C the questions that Class D is writing for them, so Class C can prepare in advance. In exchange, Ryuen gives her the questions Class C is writing, which is the paper she will personally have to sit. With the mathematics questions in her hands beforehand, winning is not a contest at all. It is a clean plan, and it fails completely, for two separate reasons, neither of which she can see coming. The first is that Horikita went to Chabashira in advance and arranged two things: that only Horikita, as class representative, may submit the class's question paper, and that if anybody else tries to submit questions on her behalf, Chabashira will pretend to accept them and then act on none of them. So Kushida submitted her own carefully disguised set of questions, made to look difficult while being ones Class C already had the answers to, and they went into a bin, and she never knew. The second is that Ryuen swapped Class C's questions at the last minute anyway, because somebody had tipped him off that Horikita had a counterplan. The paper Kushida had memorized was worthless before she sat down. And the moment it lands is very quiet. The examination begins, and she does not move for 2 or 3 minutes. Everything proceeds normally. Then the mathematics paper starts, and she looks at it and says one word out loud. Why? Horikita wins. The anime never states either of their scores, so I am not going to give you a number, but the shape of it is simple enough. With the advance information gone, it became a straight academic contest between a grade student and a B grade student. And Kushida honors the bet, in the narrowest and coldest way available. She admits she lost, she confirms she will keep the terms, and then she specifies exactly what those terms cover. She will not interfere with Class D, she will not cooperate with it either. She tells Horikita that she hates her more now than she ever did before. Then she points out something everybody had missed. Ayanokoji's safety was never actually written into the terms she agreed to. So he becomes the target instead. That is the end of the war, and it is important to see what kind of ending it is. Nobody was reconciled. Nothing was resolved. A campaign against one person was halted by contract and immediately redirected at another, and the girl at the center of it walked back into that classroom the following morning and was, once again, the most liked person in the room. What follows for most of the third season is quiet. That is worth noting rather than skipping, because it is easy to assume a character like this must be scheming continuously. She is not. She keeps the terms. She goes to lessons, does the social work, and is pleasant to everybody, and for a long stretch nothing happens with her at all. She is not reformed and she is not plotting. She is simply doing what she has always done in the absence of a threat, which is accumulate. More goodwill, more contacts, more confidences, banked steadily against a day she cannot predict. And then a day arrives that she could not have predicted, and the school sets an examination that turns her entire life's work into a scoreboard. Which brings us to the examination that could have been designed specifically to destroy her, and did not. The rules are simple and vicious. Every student receives 3 praise votes and 3 criticism votes. Praise cancels criticism. You cannot vote for yourself, cannot abstain, cannot leave the ballot blank. The student with the most praise votes receives a protection point, a one-time shield against expulsion, and the student with the most criticism votes is expelled from the school. It is the first examination at this school that removes first-year students, and it does it purely by popularity. Which means for once the entire contest is fought on Kushida's home ground. Everything she has built over a year and a half, every favor, every confidence, every quiet piece of social repair, converts directly into currency here. And she still ends up on the wrong side of it, which is the interesting part. What happens first is that a block forms inside Class D, close to half the room, organizing criticism votes against Ayanokoji. He learns about it and does the obvious thing. He goes to the only person in that class with enough reach to assemble something like that in the dark. He calls Kushida. He does not accuse her. He simply asks who is running it. She denies being behind it. Then she says she does know who it is, but that she cannot tell him because she is the only person who knows, and the moment the name came out, the ringleader would understand exactly who had betrayed them. He accepts that and lets it go. She asks what he intends to do about it. He says that without a name, there is nothing he can do. And then she gives him the name anyway. Haruki Yamauchi. Her stated reason is that she wants to see how he will turn the situation around. Understand what that is. She organized the campaign, or near enough. She fed it, and then she sold out her own operation, not under pressure, not for any advantage, but because watching him work his way out of a trap was more entertaining than watching the trap close. She is not helping him. She is running an experiment on him and would like to see the result. He works out shortly afterwards that Yamauchi is not the real author of any of it, that Sakayanagi of Class A is the one directing him, and Kushida confirms that too. Then comes the day before the vote, and the only moment in the entire animated story where anybody lays a hand on her in public. Horikita stands up in front of the whole class. She argues that they cannot afford to lose a capable student, and then she names the person she believes should go, which is Yamauchi. She lays out his weaknesses against pseudos and EKs and co-NGs, and she finishes with the thing that ends him, which is that Yamauchi has been acting as Class A's instrument inside their own room through his connection to Sakayanagi. And in the same breath, she names Kushida. She states in front of every single classmate that Kushida helped Yamauchi gather the criticism votes against Ayanokoji. And Kushida admits it. Immediately, publicly, without a fight. But watch how she admits it, because this is the most skilled thing she does in the entire series. She does not deny a fact she cannot deny. She concedes it, and she frames it as well-meaning help given to a friend, a small misjudgment made for decent reasons. It is not a confession. It is damage control, executed in real time, in front of an audience, under an accusation that happens to be completely true. Hirata, furious at the whole business, blocks Horikita's attempt to put any of it to a class vote, on the grounds that it will only destroy the friendships holding the room together. He has no alternative to offer. The meeting breaks up with nothing decided. The vote happens the next day. Yamauchi receives 33 criticism votes and is expelled. Sudo receives 21, EK 20. Ayanokoji takes first place in praise votes with 42, which is more votes than there are students in the class, an impossibility that Sakayanagi arranged single-handed for reasons of her own. Hirata comes second. And Kushida comes third. Sit with that because it is the single strongest piece of evidence in this entire story. Less than 24 hours earlier, she had been publicly named, in front of everyone, as an organizer of a smear campaign against a classmate. She had conceded it out loud. Every person in that room heard the accusation, watched her admit it, and then went home and privately cast their ballots. And they voted for her anyway, 3rd out of 40, behind only the boys Sakayanagi rigged the count for, and Hirata. The lesson is not that the mask has never been questioned. The mask has been questioned publicly by the sharpest person in the class, with evidence, and it survived the questioning without a scratch. That is a different and much more unsettling kind of durability. Before the second year, though, there is a stretch of the 3rd season worth walking through, because it shows what her inventory is actually worth once somebody competent gets hold of it. Rumors begin circulating about Honami Ichinose, the leader of Class B, the most genuinely liked student in the entire year. They are personal, they are damaging, and they spread with the particular speed of things people want to believe. The source of the material is Kushida. Not directly, she does not spread anything herself, and her name never appears anywhere near it. What she does is sell. Ayanokoji buys from her the dirt she has accumulated on students across the whole first year, and the price he agrees to is half of his private points, every month indefinitely. Then he passes the material to the vice president of another class, who does the actual spreading, so that by the time the rumors reach anybody, they have traveled through 2 intermediaries and cannot be traced back to either of them. Ichinose is nearly destroyed by it. And Kushida's involvement is, technically, nothing at all. She sold some information. She did not spread a rumor, did not target anyone, did not break a rule, did not lie to a soul. She simply had inventory and somebody wanted to buy it. That distinction matters enormously to her, and not at all to Ichinose. It is also the clearest look the story ever gives you at the actual scale of what she is holding. A boy who calculates everything decided that her files were worth half his income for the rest of his time at that school, and then used a fraction of them to shift the opinion of an entire year group about the most popular girl in it. She has been collecting since her first week. She's still collecting, and what she collects is worth, by a careful buyer's own valuation, more than any other single asset a student at that school could own. Then the second year begins, and the school does something that ought to expose her, and instead confirms her. An application arrives, distributed by the new student council president, showing every student's assessed abilities as numbers. 4 scales: academic ability from written examinations, physical ability from sport, adaptability, which measures thinking on your feet, communication, the size of your social circle, and whether you behave appropriately within it, and social contribution, which measures classroom attitude, attendance, absence of problem behavior, and what you give to the school. Kushida's card reads academic ability B at 72, physical ability C+ at 60, adaptability A- at 82, and social contribution A at 88. Her overall comes out at a B at 74, which is the second highest score in Class 2D, behind only Hirata. The school built an instrument to measure what a student contributes to the people around them, pointed it at a girl who once dismantled an entire classroom for sport and is currently holding a ledger of everyone's secrets, and the instrument returned an A. It is not wrong either. That is what makes it funny and awful at once. She does contribute. The number is accurate. The machine simply has no column for intent. And there is a detail in how that rating is calculated which is almost too neat. Of the 4 scales, social contribution is the one the school weights differently, counting it at half value in the final total. Everything else counts fully. So the school, in designing its instrument, made a decision about what a student is worth. Academic ability, full weight; physical ability, full weight; adaptability, full weight; and what you give to the people around you, half. Kushida's 2 strongest scores are the 2 social ones, and one of them has been deliberately discounted before it reaches her total. Which means the school has looked at a girl whose entire being is organized around what other people think of her, measured that quality more accurately than any of her classmates could, rated it near the ceiling, and then quietly decided it matters half as much as being able to run. She would find that unbearable if she thought about it, and the story never shows her thinking about it. The second year also gives her a working role that is worth noting, because it is the closest the story comes to showing what she would look like as a straightforwardly useful member of a class. The first examination of that year pairs every second-year student with an incoming first year, and a student without a partner takes a penalty. 2 of the rival classes immediately start bidding cash for the best first years, which turns the whole thing into an auction. Horikita refuses to fight it on that ground, works out that winning outright is worth less than the money it would cost, and negotiates instead. And Kushida simply goes and does what she does. She takes a partner from Class B. She matches Ike, who would otherwise have drifted into a bad arrangement, with a girl from another class. She delivers her own contacts to the class as an asset, and Horikita treats them as one. None of this is a redemption, and the story does not frame it as one. She is not doing it out of loyalty. But it is a real demonstration that when her interests and the class's interests happen to run in the same direction, she is worth more to Class D than almost anyone in it, which is precisely the problem Horikita has never been able to solve. As for where she actually stands by the end of the animated story, the honest answer is paused. She keeps the terms of the bet exactly as she specified them. She does not interfere with Class D, she does not help it either, beyond what a normal student would do, and she remains entirely unreconciled with Horikita. In the second year she's still doing the social work, still brokering, still reading rooms faster than anybody else in them, and she and Horikita are still, quietly, enemies. There is a small moment early in that second year that tells you how deep it runs. Horikita cuts her hair short as a statement of resolve. Sudo mentions that Kushida's short hair looks good too. Kushida agrees pleasantly, and then decides she will grow hers long, so as not to match. 2 years in, after everything, she is still differentiating herself from Horikita at the level of a haircut. And there is one more thread the animation leaves hanging. A first-year student named Yagami arrives who went to the same middle school and who knows what she did there. She states plainly that she intends to get rid of him for exactly that reason. When Ayano points out that removing Yagami would be considerably harder than removing him or Horikita, and reminds her that she has a ceasefire with both of them, her answer is that she has been very well behaved. What Yagami knows, how he knows it, and what becomes of it, the anime does not resolve. It is an open loop, and I am going to leave it as one rather than tell you how it turns out, because the story has not told us yet. But there is one last scene, near the very end of the animated story, and it is the closest thing to a reckoning that Kikyo Kushida ever receives on screen. It happens on the island, during the second-year survival examination, and it is not Horikita who does it, and it is not Ayano. It is a first-year girl called Ichika Amasawa. Amasawa corners her, and then she takes the mask apart to her face, calmly, item by item, and Kushida cannot deflect a single piece of it. Think about how remarkable that is, given everything we have just walked through. Ayano saw the real thing once in the dark, and was neutralized in 4 seconds by a threat she invented on the spot. Horikita named her in front of the entire class with evidence, and Kushida conceded the fact so smoothly that the room voted her third best person in it the following day. And then a first-year student, who has known her for a matter of months, walks up and simply says what she is, and none of the machinery works. The mask does not come off exactly. Nothing is announced, nobody else finds out, and the class carries on knowing nothing. But for the length of that conversation in front of one person, the thing is completely transparent, and the person seeing it is not afraid of her and cannot be bought or threatened. That is where the animated story leaves her, still masked, still hunting, publicly untouched, third in the class's own affections, with the school's own instruments rating her the second most valuable student in the room. And privately known by exactly 3 people: the boy she caught watching her, the girl she has spent 2 years trying to destroy, and a first year she did not see coming. The same goes for the larger question, and this is where I want to be straight with you. If you have spent any time reading about this character, you will have encountered a scene where the mask finally comes off completely, in front of the whole class, and she breaks, and Horikita makes a decision about what to do with her afterwards. It is the most discussed Kushida moment there is, it is everywhere, and a great many recaps will tell you it happened during the class vote we just walked through. It did not. It sits 1 volume past the end of the current animated story, and it has not been adapted yet. So this video stops where the anime stops, which means it stops without resolution, and I would rather leave you at the real edge than hand you something that has not happened yet. Which is, in a way, the right place for her to be left. Because the thing about Kikyo Kushida, the thing that makes her the most interesting person in that school, is that she has never actually been caught. Not really. Ayano saw her once in the dark, and she bought his silence in 4 seconds. Horikita named her in public, and the class voted for her the next day. Ayano beat her at the bet, and she paid exactly what she owed and not one thing more, and walked away hating harder. Every single time somebody has laid a glove on her, she has absorbed it and kept going, and the room has kept loving her. And underneath all of it is a girl who is not a monster and was never given a reason to become one. No cruelty was done to her, no wound explains her. She simply found out, very early, that being praised felt extraordinary, and then one day it stopped, and she decided she would rather build a machine to manufacture it forever than live without it. She's still running that machine. It still works. It costs her her hair and her stomach and any possibility of being known by another person, and she has never once indicated that she considers the price too high. There is a way of reading her that I want to offer before we finish, not because it excuses anything, but because it is the reading the story keeps quietly pointing at. Everyone else at that school is playing a game with a scoreboard. Class points, private points, examinations, the climb from D to A. Every student in that building can tell you exactly where they stand, because the school publishes it. Kushida is playing a game with no scoreboard at all. There is no number for being the most trusted person in the room. No examination measures it, no letter reflects it, nothing tells her when she has enough, which means the game cannot be won, and it cannot be finished, and there is no version of the future in which she gets to stop. Horikita can reach Class A, Ayano can graduate, Ichinose class can win something, every one of them has an exit condition. Kushida has to be loved by everybody again, tomorrow, and the day after, forever, and any single person who sees through her, is an existential threat rather than an inconvenience, because there is no total she can bank that makes one defector survivable. That is why the response to Horikita is so wildly disproportionate. A girl who barely remembered her, who knew a name and no details, who had done nothing at all. And Kushida spent a year in a campaign, and eventually her own leverage trying to remove her from the building, and lost, and hated her more afterwards. It was never revenge. It was a girl trying to close the only hole in a hull she can never stop bailing out. And there is one more thing, which is the saddest of them, and the story is quiet enough about it that it is easy to miss. The machine works, that is the tragedy. It is not the story of somebody whose lie collapses. She is genuinely adored by nearly 40 people, most of whom would list her among the 3 people they value most in that room, and they are not being fooled about the value. She really does hold that class together. She simply cannot receive any of it. Every kind word that comes back to her is addressed to a person she invented, so none of it lands, and she has to go out and get more, immediately, forever. She has built the most efficient possible engine for manufacturing exactly the thing she needs, and it turns out that the thing it manufactures cannot be absorbed by the person operating it. Which is why she was outside that dormitory in the dark, not because the party went badly. The party went beautifully, that was the problem. There is a question worth leaving you with, and I do not think the story has an answer to it either. Ayanokoji asked it in the 3rd episode and never got anywhere. He went back through every conversation, looking for the seam, trying to work out which version of her he had been talking to, and he could not find it. Not because he is not clever enough, because there may not be one. We tend to assume that a person with a mask has a real face under it, and that the mask is the lie and the face is the truth, and that if you could just get the mask off you would finally be looking at the person. But she has been doing this since junior high. She has been the trusted one, the warm one, the one who remembers, for years and years, every waking hour without a day off. The version of her that screams at a barrier in the dark is not a person who has been hiding under there all along, waiting. It is what is left over. It is the pressure that the performance generates, and it only exists because the performance exists. Take the mask away and you would not find the true Kikyo Kushida underneath it. You would find a girl who does not know what she would be if she were not being adored, and who has never once, in her whole life, tried to find out. That is a genuinely frightening thing to be, and she is not frightened, which is the part that stays with you. She describes destroying 30 people as truly amazing. She threatens a boy with a false accusation and then chats to him normally for the next 2 years. She looks at the price she is paying, in hair and sleep and any possibility of being known, and does not consider it worth reconsidering. Somewhere in the 2nd year of that school, there is a girl walking between classes, saying hello to everybody by name, remembering what each of them told her, meaning it in her way and holding all of it, and never once putting any of it down. The most liked girl in the school, alone in the dark behind a dormitory, screaming at a steel barrier, and then straightening up and going back inside to the party she organized. Sleep well.